pyrotechnics and everything. Good afternoon, everyone. You'll notice that I'm not North American. I'll make translations during the presentation, if that's OK. My name is Chris Pace. I'm here representing CoinCover. We're a digital asset protection technology. Let's begin by... So, yes, it was a clickbaity title. Hands up, clickbaity title. There may not actually be dragons, just so we're all aware. But what's good about this graphic is that it kind of explains the place that we find ourselves in on the crypto journey. And that is, for those of us in the room, and those of us like me, who've been in this industry for an entire week, after 15 years in cybersecurity, finding myself on a stage talking to all of you, we should see ourselves as pioneers. And that's a good thing. It's a great thing that we're pioneers. But of course, what it means is we venture into the unknown. Interesting fact, none of the maps that you think say, "Here be dragons," actually say, "Here be dragons" on them. It's basically shorthand for the map writer to say, we don't know what's here. Could be anything. There could be anything here. And that is a thing that we have to consider in order to move from seeing ourselves as pioneers to maps like these turning into flight paths for commercial airlines. That's an analogy that helps us understand, for those looking to build businesses on crypto and the blockchain, we have to be ready to take the wider world on a journey with us. And the only way that we do that is by removing the barriers that exist for them to be ready to go on that journey. And I want to keep that as the sort of context for the entire rest of my presentation. Maybe at points during the next 10 minutes or so, ask yourself, well, I'm cool with that as a pioneer in this space, but is the wider world? Now, later on today, there's going to be what I'm sure will be a fascinating panel around regulation in crypto. Fascinating to some of us. But actually, it talks directly to a big challenge that we have, which is how do we democratize this space? How do we make crypto accessible for all? This is Chris Hadfield, who's a Canadian astronaut, and this is a quote from a fantastic article that I would definitely recommend you read. It's on the CBC website, and it's basically all about his attitude to fear. And he says in that article, the only reason that I'm not frightened of things is that I spend all my time preparing for every eventuality that encompasses the things that I might be frightened of. Now, unfortunately, the rest of the world is not an astronaut in exactly the same way as the rest of the world is not a crypto pioneer. So it's dangerous to do audience participation when this room is so massive. But can we take a stab at what we think today if you asked, for example, my mom, what is the biggest barrier to her adopting crypto for her grandchildren? What do you think she would say? Money, not having enough money? She's scared. What's she scared of? Losing it. Why might she be scared of losing it? Scams, good. Volatility, lack of understanding, all very good. Actual answer, hacker bad guys, boo. Now, I have a rule when I give these presentations, and having been in cybersecurity 15 years, I've given a lot of these presentations. I always choose for my hacker image the first search result in Google Images. That's what you get. That's what you're getting today. It does change fairly frequently, but it's usually a guy in a hoodie and loads of screens. Now, it's easy for us to say that the biggest fear is from the hacker, but do we genuinely believe it's the biggest risk? Is volatility a bigger risk? There's some other risks that we'll look at as well. I mean, it's definitely a risk. These numbers will attest to that. It is definitely a risk. And let me try to help us understand why that might be. if I am a very organized criminal group operating out of Eastern Europe somewhere, not naming any names of countries, and I decide that I'm going to hack a corporate enterprise, that is quite a lot of work for me. I know it seems that sometimes that's not the case. Just send out a bit of ransomware, ask for $250 million, and you're golden, off you go. Obviously, collect it in Bitcoin. Whisper it, go on and collect it in Bitcoin because it can't be traced. But it's pretty easy. And actually, what else might you get? You might get a load of personally identifiable information off that network. But actually, there's a lot of phases that are required to make that attack work. Why is it easier to attack an exchange technology that is essentially a startup that isn't prepared to be attacked by an organized cyber criminal group? It is much easier. And once you have access to that company and to that exchange technology, you're helping yourself to hundreds of millions of dollars. So it is an issue, and it's not surprising that, and this headline about North Korea is just from a few days ago. They have recognized that there is a line of least resistance that gets them to large amounts of funds by targeting fundamentally weaker technologies. And that's because this industry is pioneering. So again, now is the moment to ask yourself that question. Well, I'm cool with that. But is my mum, my dad, my sister, are they cool with that? And what do we do about it? Actually, as risks go, the hacker risk makes great headlines, as you will know, because the mainstream media loves to find a bad guy, and they love to make them seem scarier than they really are, and that's what they've done with hackers. But actually, our biggest problem, especially in the context of crypto loss and securing digital assets and protecting and recovering digital assets, is the way that we have to look after them. The responsibility that we take as pioneers in this space for looking after our own investments. Now, of course, in the context of a traditional financial services or a credit card company, these concerns are they're not part of the play, right? I love this. I'm assuming this is a Daily Mail headline or something, complete idiot Bitcoin trader. I'm not sure how much of an idiot Stephen Thomas is. He's become a bit of a poster child for crypto loss, I guess you could call it. The other guy is the guy in Wales, I love this story, who accidentally threw away a 20 gig hard drive with 1,000 Bitcoin on it, and has ever since been all over the news media trying to get somebody to come with him with large, I don't know what you guys call them, like diggers, excavators, whatever, to this landfill in Wales where he knows these hard drives are, and to dig up the landfill. So, again, I'm going to ask you to ask the same question to yourself. How sustainable is the model where someone can accidentally throw away a hard drive and then need to rake through literally thousands, hundreds and thousands of tons of rubbish in order to try and recover their investment? I'm not going to ask the room, but I'm going to allow you to think for yourself. How sustainable is that? Also, A Death in Crypto Land, a fantastic CBC podcast, which talks about a crypto company. I want to say it was an exchange in India where the founder died, and he was the only person who had access to the investments inside the system. Nobody knows how to get to them. We have to begin, if we are going to make a journey to crypto for all, we have to begin to ask ourselves the question, can we address the security, I wouldn't even call them issues, fears, concerns. Now, some would argue that maybe regulation is the way that you look to fix that. I don't have an answer to that. But what we do know is all the research tells us that security remains the biggest concern, not just for institutional investors, as shown in this headline, but for adoption of crypto more broadly. Here's a quote from that idiot trader. This whole idea of being your own bank, let me put it this way. Do you make your own shoes? Now, again, this goes back to that same question, doesn't it? If you're a pioneer in this space, you'll say, I'm cool with that. I'm cool with being my own bank. I want to be my own bank. And here is where we begin to see is it a dichotomy? Is it a tension behind this whole idea of the idea that crypto is democratizing? Let me tell you something. If you're living in Southern Africa and you don't have access to finance, and the only way that you can access finance is through something, decentralized, through a coin. If that's the case, trust me, you care a lot more about whether those assets remain secure than you do if you're just having a flutter in Miami and putting a couple of grand in. It's a totally different mindset. So if we're really serious about decentralized finance being something that helps everyone, the wider world, that is truly democratized, we do have to think seriously about how we solve that problem. I already alluded to this, and again, I suppose this is where tension exists between the sort of traditional ideas and approaches around decentralizing and therefore democratizing finance, is that now, of course, regulators are very interested in ensuring that citizens in their countries are protected. And I'm sure there will be counter-arguments that say regulation is only, for other nefarious means. I don't have a view either way. But what I do know is that if we are involved in technologies that are looking to take crypto to the wider world, we must consider regulation and therefore security and assurance and trust. Those have to become words that start to exist in our lexicon, because that's what something becoming more broadly adopted really will ultimately mean. Now, I wanted to end with some handy tips for what to do with your 24-word seed phrase. I feel like this should be some kind of competition, or someone should do something on Shark Tank. What I can tell you is that this middle thing, Bill Foddle, anyone got a Bill Foddle? Who knows, like how you say it, I don't know anyway. But it really, really hurts your fingers. I can tell you that. What I find fascinating about this, though, is my mum has made it a lot into this presentation, but I've been telling my mum for 20 years, do not write your password down. Don't write it down. That's really bad. And now she goes on a crypto website to give her advice, and it says, okay, everything offline. Write it down. Put it in an envelope. Put it away somewhere. Your kids will never find it. What happens if you die? The lack of regulation means that today, I don't really want to talk about my mum dying, but, you never do life, death, circle of life, all that. One day, she won't be here. I don't know where that password is. How is that money any use to her grandchildren if it can never be recovered? These seem like such, mundane, like human factor things, but they're things that, especially, again, those of us looking to build technologies for broader adoption, we have to think about these things. Chains of ownership, again, trust, reliability, they become important. Actually, interestingly, also out of that article about security, it also mentioned that many older investors looking at crypto are actually doing it to invest for their children and for their grandchildren. They want a way to be able to ensure that change of ownership remains. So I have a minute left, which means you'll be relieved to know there isn't going to be a product demonstration or 12 pages of product slides. This is our very simple mission. We are a company that exists to make crypto accessible to all by ensuring it is safe to hold and use. And I think this goes directly back to that point I was making right at the start of the presentation. We, definitely you, less so me, are the pioneers. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in crypto, like the seed phrase thing and hurting my fingers on the Bill Foddle, where I'm like, I'm cool with it. But in order for us to really begin to see crypto democratized for all, for there to be a journey to crypto for all, behind the pioneers who went there first, making that safe to hold and use becomes, we and coin cover believe, really, really important. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.